Good morning. Today we are working on CO63. I can interpret and create box and whisker plots. This is another new type of graph, and it's more complicated than the stem and leaf that we learned yesterday. So even though we went through that stem and leaf yesterday, and people are like, oh, I get it, there was still a lot of us doing it incorrectly. We saw that when we were correcting today. The box and whisker is a little bit more complicated than yesterday. So I really need us to focus and pay attention. And I need us to ask questions when something isn't quite making sense. Okay. So I really, truly need you to ask those questions because this is new and it is a little more complicated. So we need to understand all the vocabulary that we're going to be looking at. So a box and whisker plot is data, the data display that divides a data set into four parts. We're going to have a lower extreme, lower quartile, a median, upper quartile, and upper extreme. So box and whisker plot shows the range and the median of the data. When we talk about range, that's when we put all of the data that we have, when we put them in order, it's the difference between our smallest number to our biggest number. So when our data is in order, let's see if I have a range up here. So if we look over on my board here, here's my data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Our lowest data point was 1. Our highest is 9. Oh, sorry, I read this wrong. The lowest was 2. The highest was 9. So I'm going to find that range, I'm going to say 9 minus 2 equals 7. I take my biggest data, I subtract out my lowest data, and that's my range. Going from the small to the biggest, there are 7 points in there. Okay. So on our box and whisker plot, we can easily see our lowest point and our highest point. And if we subtract them, we're going to get the range. All of our data falls in between those 2 points. So we have the 5-number summary to this data. Our minimum score is the bottom part of our range. So our minimum score is right here. That would be a 72. Right? Because that's the smallest point. So I need to look at my biggest point. Between 86 and 89 would be 88. What would my range be? If I were to have range written here, what would the range of my data be? What do all of my points, how far is the difference between my lowest and my biggest data point? Madeline? Yeah, because I would take 88, my biggest data point, and I would subtract out my lowest data point. So I know my range is 16. So I can see that all of my data falls in between those 2 points, and the range is the biggest subtracted the smallest. So it's important that we know mean, median, and mode. We also need to know the range. And in this one, it's really easy to see that range because it's the 2 farthest endpoints of our graph. So now, we said there are 4 parts. We've got 4 parts to our data. There's a lower quartile and an upper quartile. And in the middle is our median. So in the very middle is the median. What would our median be on this graph? Kim?
78.5.
Be careful, because these are all jumping. They're skipping. 78, line 82. So in between 78 and 82 would be an 80. So if it's halfway between 78 and 80, what would it be, Cam? If it's halfway between 78 and 80, what falls in between those two? When you're counting. Yeah, 79. So that median is 79. We know it's the median because always, always, always on our box and whisker, you will see the box cut by a line. That line will always tell us the median. Okay, so we have half of our data is here, and the other half of our data is here. So the lower quartile is, we're going into we've got the top half and top half, bottom half. So the lower quartile is going to be the middle of that bottom half because we want 4 parts. So we've got 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts. The median is the middle of the box. And then we can see, oh, that bottom section, we want the middle of that. That's our lower quartile. It's the middle of the bottom section. Melanie. It is 75 because that is the middle of the bottom section. So we've got the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile are where we divide up our graph into our 4 parts. So we can see the beginning is our lowest point, the lower quartile, then we have the median. What are we going to call this side of our box, Melanie? The upper quartile, which would be 85. And then we have our farthest point out. So we can see our 4 sections. It's a little confusing with the new words. Big thing we have to remember with the box and whisker plot is there's how many sections? 4. 4 sections. The median of all of our data is going to be that line that breaks up our box. So then we can see we have 2 sections that are in the lower, 2 sections that are in the upper. So that lower quartile is the middle of the bottom half. The upper quartile is the middle of the upper half. Here's the thing. All of our data falls evenly in each section. So that median means half the data is below it, half the data is up. Then we break the upper and lower in half. So all this data, all this data, all this data, all this data, all those points are equal. So there might be 5, 5, 5, and 5. 5 data points in each section. So each of those sections have the same number of data points. So for this, it's math test scores. So we had the same number of people scored 85 to 88 as how many scores there are between 79 and 85. So that's how many scores. They're all even amount of scores in each section. So 4 sections, same number of test scores. It's not going to be the same score number, right? Because we have different scores listed down below. But if there's 5 scores that were in the upper, or like the farthest range up, then there's going to be 5 scores that were in that middle section, 5 scores in that section, and 5 scores in that section. So when we break it up into 4 sections, each section has the same number of scores. Does that make sense? Kind of. So, knowing what we know about the range, going from the farthest out, subtracting out the lower, what would be the interquartile range? If we know our lower quartile and our upper quartile, what's the interquartile range? Marina? 10. Because 85 minus 75 is 10. So between 85 and 75, it's a range of 10. So now let's look at our range of scores. When we say range of scores, we're going to put our lowest score, which was 72, to our highest score, which is 88. That's our range of scores. And we're going to say that 88 minus 72 was 16. So there's a range of scores that are 16. So now let's look at that and say if 28 students took the test, there's 28 students, 28 scores. How many scored between 79 and 85? What do I have to do to find that out? I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I don't see any number, I don't see any scores listed. I don't know how many scored between 79 and 85. How can I figure that out? Thinking about what I told us about our sections. Melanie?
The right half of the box, which is the top of the line, like that within.
So we have one section is here. That's the 79 to 85. And then we have this section here, which is 85 to 88. I have another section here and another section here. How do I know? We're not looking at the score range down here, because that's not telling us how many people scored in there. But I know there were 28 students that took the test. There are 4 sections that divide up our scores evenly. So think about what I just said. There are 28 students that took the test, and we know the box and whisker plot divides up our data into 4 even parts. So what do I have to do to see how many scores were in each part? Ava? Listen to what I'm saying. There are 28 students that took the test. We know box and whisker divides up our data into 4 equal parts. How can I figure out how many scored in one of those sections? Lauren? No. Why 2? How many? If we want to know this section right here, is that half of my scores? How many sections do I have?
4.
And that's one of them. Claire? 28 divided by 4, because there are 28 all together and 4 equal sections. One section is going to be that 28 divided by 4. So how many students scored in that section of 79 to 85? Marina? 7. My second question says, how many scored between 85 and 88? Look at that, that's one of my sections. So if I had 7 score in this section, how many are gonna have scored in that section? Think again about what I said. There are 4 equal sections. So if we know that this section had 7 scores in it, how many scores are going to be in this section, Jimena?
You have to subtract 20, you have to subtract 7 from 28.
So that would be taking 1 section out of 4, and that would leave me with 3 sections. Hannah Mae? Why would it still be 7, Hannah Mae?
Equal.
Because they are equal parts. If there are 7 here, there's going to be 7 here. How many are going to be in this section? How many would be in this section? If you figure out 1 section, you know how many are in the other sections. That is one of the biggest things we have to remember about the box and whisker plots. If you can figure out 1 section, you know all the sections. So if we look at this, the original box and whisker, we know from the farthest out point to that lower quartile is 1 section. We know from that lower quartile to the median, that's another section. From the median to the upper quartile is another section, and the upper quartile to our farthest point is another section. They all have the same number of data points in them. Even though we can see that this side is small and this side is big, that just means it's a smaller range of scores. So maybe there were 7 75s or 80s. I'm sorry. This is a 76. Maybe there were a lot of people that scored right in here. Here we have scores that go between them. There's going to be 7 scores that are here. Here there are 7 scores. It's just not a big range. Okay, a lot of people scored the same score. It's not as spread out, but there's still 7 scores that were in each of those sections. So let's look at our next one. The scatter plot shows the totals of points scored in several basketball games. Find the 5-number summary of the data. What was my lowest points scored in a basketball game? What is my minimum score? Where? 15. That farthest point to the left is my minimum, the smallest number of points scored. What was my maximum? What was the biggest point scored, Sawyer? 30. So all of my scores range between 15 and 30. What is the lower quartile? Marina?
17.5.
We're going to go right in between, right here. So we know this is 15, this is 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that would be 17.5. Because that's that median. So that tells me when I'm playing basketball, can I score a half a point? No, I can't. So that means I don't have a score that was the actual median. Remember when we have even numbers, if we take the 2 middle and we add them together and we divide them by 2, we might end up with that half point. What is the median of all of my numbers? Marina?
41.
because I'm gonna go to that line. That line in the box is my median of all of my scores. That's at a 21. So what's the upper quartile? Lauren?
27.5.
Yeah, that upper quartile is the end of the box on the right, which would be 27.5. So lower quartile is the left box, upper quartile is the right side of the box. The median is that line in the middle. So what is my interquartile range? Ava,
I got 10
how did you get 10, Ava?
because I subtracted 27.5 minus 17.5.
I take my upper quartile, I subtract my lower quartile, and I get a range of 10. What is the range for all of my scores? Melanie, how did you get 15?
I did 30 minus 15.
30 minus 15 equals 15. I took my maximum, I subtracted my minimum, and I get a range of 15. So now A says, how many games had between 15 and 21 points? Oh, whew, can't miss this. If 48 games have been played, 48 games were played, how many had games between 15 and 21 points? If there were 48 games, what do you think, Claire?
And we didn't do the
We didn't do what?
we didn't do the
Yeah, we did. We did. I walked us through that. If there were 28 students and they're divided into 4 equal sections, what do we have to do? I wrote it. You just didn't write it. Yeah, I wrote it. Oh, yeah, that's just the information. Just like this is our information. It's important to know how many games were played. It's important to know how many students took the test. It's not asking a question. The A and the B are asking the questions.
Okay.
So if 48 games were played, how many games scored between 15 and 21? What do you think, Marina?
I originally thought it was 12, but then I realized it takes up 2 sections, so then it's 24.
Yay! I love everything about that. Absolutely everything. She said, oh, there's 4 sections on the box and whisker, so I have to divide by 4, right? 4 sections divide by 4. So she did 48 divided by 4, and she got 12. But then she looked and said, hey, wait a minute. There are 2 sections. So there were 12 games in the first section and 12 games in the second section. So if there's 12 and 12, she had to multiply it by 2, and she got that 24. Because there's 4 sections. You got that part, Cam? Box and whisker has 4 equal sections, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal sections. Our range that we were looking at for games, Marina noticed took up 2 of those sections. So she found out how much was in one section, and then she was able to see how much 2 sections would be. So how many games had between 27.5 and 30? How many games had those points? What do you think, Jimena?
Would it be 12?
It would be 12. How do you know it's 12, Jimena?
Because it's just one of the.
It's one section, and we found out up here that one section was 12. So if we're looking at just one section of the box and whisker, we know it's going to be 12 games. When we looked at two sections, we knew it was 24 games. Is it making a little more sense? So let's look at our work page. Oh, there is one more question. Thank you. Notice the lower and upper quartiles. A game cannot have a total of 17.5 or 27.5 points. Why would those values be decimals? Who was listening? Because I already answered this. Anime?
Is it because you can't have like a half a point?
Yeah.
But there is. A game can't have a total of 17.5 or 27.5. So why do we have that as our upper and lower quartiles? Do you remember who remembers what I said about 4 minutes ago? Maybe 5. It was a long time ago. Why did I say that our lower quartile had that 0.5? Remember that lower quartile and the upper quartile are the medians of the upper section and the lower section. Why would a median have a 0.5? You remember, Melanie?
Well, you can get a 0.5 whenever there's two numbers, and then you add in the divided.
If our median isn't in the middle and I have equal numbers. So if I had a 17 and an 18 as my middle two numbers, I have to add them together and divide by 2. That's how we get that 0.5. So nobody actually scored 17.5 in the basketball game, but there were some scores of 17 and some scores of 18, and they're in the middle of all of those scores. So I might have had a 15, a 16, a 17 and 18, a 19, and a 21. The middle score of those 6 numbers would be 17.5. So that's how we end up with that 0.5, because there's an even amount of scores, and it's the middle of those scores. So you're going to have to write out what that means in your words. I told it to you. You write it out in your words, what I just said. So we've got a box and whisker plot already drawn for us. So you're going to answer that 5 number summary, the minimum, the maximum. Minimum is the farthest to the left. Maximum is the farthest to the right. That lower quartile, left side of the box, the median, the line in the middle, the upper quartile, that side to the right. Look at your ranges, answer your questions. Remembering how many equal sections is our graph divided into? How many equal sections is our graph divided into? 4. So each of those sections has the same number of data entries. Down here it says create a box and whisker plot from the data below, showing the amounts in inches of snowfall from each of the last 12 years. Oh my goodness, we have to draw our own box and whisker plot. So what do you think I should start my number line at? Oh, what do you think the first thing I should do is? What do you put the numbers in order? Because I'm not going to start at 38 when I have 22 next. Oh goodness, I need to put them in order. So my smallest number I see is 20. Then I see a 22. I see 27. 31, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, another 42, a 44, and a 45. Now, what number am I going to want to start my number line at? 20. I don't have to go all the way to 0, because that's a whole lot of writing I don't have to do. I know my lowest number is a 20, so I'm going to start with the 20 here. What's my highest number need to be? 45. So how do I want to go from 20 to 45? Do you think I need to write each number individually? 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That's a lot of numbers to write. I think it would be easier if I skip counted. And I'm going to skip by 2s. And I know that 45 is going to be right in the middle of that 44 and 46. So now I know my farthest point is 20. My biggest point over here is 45. So I know those are my 2 endpoints. What do you think I need to do next? What would you do, Callie? How do I know how to create the box? Because that box remembers 2 sections, and then we got the whiskers that go out to the left and to the right. Those are 2 sections. So if I need 4 sections, how do I know how many scores I'm going to put in each section? Amanda? Okay, so how do I do that? Yep, so I got 20 to 45, 22 to 44, 27 to 42, 31 to 42, 34 to 40, 36, and 38. So in my middle, I have 36 and 38. Marina? 37. Yeah, in between 36 and 38 is 37. So I know that is my median. What else do I need to know? What do you think, Melanie? Yeah, I need to know my lower quartile, my upper quartile. That's finding the median of my lower, the median of my upper. So what is my median of my lower scores? If I look at that, I've got 20 and 36, I've got 22 and 34, I've got 27 and 31. So I've got 27 and 31 right there. What is the median of 27 and 31? What is that going to be? How do I find it? Melanie? Nope, not 28. 29. So in between 27 and 31 is 29. So in between 36 and 38 was 37. So I know 29 is my lower quartile. What is my upper quartile? This is my upper section. What is the upper quartile? is the median of those upper numbers. Lauren? 42. I've got 3 numbers up here and 3 numbers down here. So my upper quartile is 42. Can I fill in my box and my whiskers now? Yeah. This is the median of them all. So there is my box. And my whiskers go out to that minimum and the maximum. So when you're given all of those data from that, from all the numbers that we were given, you have to find the median, put them in order first, find the median, find that lower quartile and the upper quartile, and then you can fill in the box and the whiskers. How many amounts of snowfall are going to be in each section? Remember, we divided into 4 equal sections. Look up at my numbers. Look at where I drew my median, my upper quartile, my lower quartile. How many are in each section? Say it louder, Bryn. 3. Because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 total snowfall amounts. Remember, there are 4 sections. So I know there are 3 data points in each section. And I can see what they are in that smallest section. It's between 20 and 29 inches of snow. Then I have 29 to 37 inches of snow, 37 to 42 inches of snow, 42 to 46 inches of snow. Does that make sense how we can read that box and whisker plot? So I walked us through this one because it's really hard drawing a box and whisker for the very first time. That is how we draw. You're going to have to do this, the bottom time for review, and the top part. So you're going to have to answer the questions on that top part of that box and whisker that was already drawn. You're going to have to do the review on the bottom. If you want to come up and ask me questions to see if you're really truly understanding it, come up and see me. Okay, come to me if you have questions. I don't know who still has questions and who's getting it. So you need to clue me in. If you are watching at home and you still have questions, make sure you come and see me. I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.